You guys, I'm still not over InuYasha. It's one of the few epically long animes that I've never lost interest in. I recently tried rewatching the entire series with my son, but he got bored after one episode. So I tried again with my daughter, and we got to bond in our mutual obsession of Japanese culture and Kilala's cuteness and Moroku's lecherous ways. I mean, really, what is not to like about this series? It has interesting, unique storylines, beautiful music, rich imagery, and it's filled with Japanese culture and mythology. It's basically otaku catnip. And the beauty of this hand-drawn show is still such an amazing quality piece of work. And even though I devoutly followed the subtitled version in the early 2000s, rewatching it in English for my daughter's sake showed me that the English voice acting quality was really high. InuYasha is possibly the best anime ever produced. But there is something that the show never addresses, and I think I may have found the answer. Who are Kagome's ancestors in the feudal era? Just to head off any commenters in advance, Kagome definitely does travel back into her own timeline, and we can be sure of this because of Hojo. In episode 137, Kagome is in her own time at school, and the boy who likes her, Hojo, he brings in ancestry documents that show he had an ancestor that was married to a woman named Kagome. And because that's just how anime works, Kagome runs into this ancestor, Hojo Akitoki, shortly after this when she returns to the feudal era. Sure enough, Akitoki falls hard for Kagome and hints several times at wanting to marry her. Of course, Akitoki leaves empty-handed, but in a rare after-credits scene, Akitoki is seen meeting a young lady named Suzako, and he tells her that she should change her name to Kagome. So that's a big old case closed. And Kagome Higurashi is proven to be influencing the events of her own timeline's past. Yes, that does open up a huge can of worms about how the time travel works and what the cause and effect implications are in that universe, but that's not why we're here today. We're here to talk about Kagome's ancestors. Originally, I always thought that Kagome was her own ancestor in an I'm my own grandpa moment. It's a great song, look it up. But that would be so weird that I've come to believe that it is not the case at all. After all, there is a huge chunk of time where Kagome could not return to the feudal era, and that should have put her entire family in a state of panic that they'd all stop existing, but that never happened. So that means they know that Kagome is not their own ancestor of the past. Also, being her own ancestor would mean that Kagome would end up being part demon herself, which, based on everything we've seen in the series, that would disqualify her from being a priestess figure with such strong spiritual powers. Instead, Kagome would possess demonic powers, which would darken the jewel shards instead of purify them. So, knowing that Kagome and InuYasha end up together, it's not possible for her to be her own ancestor. It's also really easy to exclude Kikyo or Kaede from being Kagome's ancestor, because neither of them have children, so their family line has died off anyways. Plus, being the reincarnation of someone does not mean that they are blood related. So we can cross those two supporting characters right off the list. Now, it is hard to deny that Rin looks like she could be Kagome's great-great to the something power grandmother. Hold on, I know I should say Lin, but it's hard for me to switch back and forth between Japanese speech mode and English speech mode, so I'm gonna stick with an American R for this video. But if you are Japanese savvy, then Nihongo no kurasu wa doku ni arimasu ka? And you can answer that in the comments. But not only do Kagome and Rin look similar, but Jininji, the mutated half-demon who grows herbs, even makes a comment that Rin very much reminds him of Kagome. But there is only one of two ways for this to work out. Rin has expressed a semi-romantic interest in two boys in the series, Shishomaru and Kohaku. Now, even though Rin is just a little girl, these are likely her only two relationship candidates based on the men that we know are available to her in the show. And we have seen repeatedly that Rin is very attached to Shishomaru, so much so that she never intends on leaving him. Even though Kaede insisted that Rin comes and lives in a human village to understand how the human world works, Shishomaru still comes to visit her, and I can't imagine Rin getting rid of her feelings for him. Shishomaru was Rin's savior and protector, and it is unlikely that she will ever let go of those feelings, especially since pining over someone for life seems to be a very Japanese thing to do. If you doubt me, refer to Millennium Actress. So, while Kohaku would be a plausible option as a future spouse, I cannot fathom Rin abandoning her love for Shishomaru to move on with Kohaku. Nor have I seen even much of a hint that Kohaku shows any romantic feelings towards Rin. So, is it a possibility that Rin and Kohaku end up together? Yes. Would it actually happen based on the information we have? Not outside of fanfic. With that being the case, if a Rin and Shishomaru relationship would happen, and Rin was Kagome's ancestor, not only would that make Kagome related to InuYasha, ew, but it would also make Kagome part demon. And again, based on what I can take from the show, demons cannot have spiritual powers, which would mean that Kagome would not be able to purify jewel shards. Not to mention, I cannot see Shishomaru coming off of his high horse and being willing to father Hanyo babies. So Rin will very likely spend the rest of her life pining for an unrequited love. So because of all of this, that basically takes Rin out of the running as being in Kagome's lineage. Now, drumroll please. I think the answer to this mystery has been right under our noses all along. Who do we know that looks similar to Kagome? Who do we know that has the same fighting spirit and dedication when compared to Kagome? And who are the only humans we know that actually reproduce throughout the series? That's right, Sango and Moroku. The Higurashi Shrine is stated to have been in Kagome's family for generations. It's also the site where you would find the Bone Eater's Well and the Sacred Tree. And who would value those things most of all? People who know the importance and sentimentality of those locations. Genetically, Kagome and Sango are very similar in height, face shape, eyes, and body type. And no, not everyone in the series looks the same. Even though most of the characters have a cowlick, physical features between the characters are pretty diverse. And Kagome's hair bears a close resemblance to Moroku's. Also, look at Grandpa Higurashi. He has Moroku's eyebrows. They're a match. Even Sota looks like he could be a mini Moroku. So if Kagome isn't her own ancestor, and I don't think she is, it makes sense that her ancestors would be people who realized the importance of the Bone Eater's Well and the tree. People who would keep up with it for hundreds of years, knowing that Kagome would someday need the well to come to the feudal era. Sango and Moroku built their home into a shrine, a holy place that nobody would ever tear down or mess with, so that each generation of their children would have a reason to believe that this place was very important, to never sell it, to keep up with it forever. And it's all because they knew that Kagome would need that well intact and not filled in or bulldozed over in the future so that she could come back there. And even though it's hard to say which genes would be the dominant visible ones over hundreds of years, I think the clues are pretty hard to dismiss. And since Kaede never reproduced, we have no idea if Kagome will ever have children, and Rin is unlikely to get anywhere with Shishomaru. Sango and Moroku actually make perfect sense to be Kagome's ancestors. Now, having said that, I want to take a minute to explain that these are Kagome's ancestors, not her parents. So that means Kagome has more than one living ancestor in the feudal era. But if we take a broad estimate and say that Kagome went back in time about 500 years for where she is now, and we say that each generation happened about 20 years apart, that would give Kagome about 50 relatives in the feudal era. So really, any random villager that gets killed while Kagome is in the past could actually eliminate her in the future. That's horrifying to think about. And the show never even tries to touch it. So when all is said and done, even though Sango and Moroku are a perfect fit for being Kagome's ancestors, they are far from being the only ones in the series. The only thing that we can guesstimate for certain is that none of her ancestors should have demon blood in them. But everything after that is pretty much fair game. Thanks for watching this video, and if you liked it, I hope you'll like, subscribe, and check out what other videos are on my channel. Please definitely subscribe though, so that way you'll be notified when I make new videos. And if you really want to help me out, please share this video with people that you think would enjoy watching it. Thanks again!